This is a short but deep episode on how we can use our past and future versions of ourselves to help us heal in the present. And if that didn't really make sense, don't worry, it will. I promise. If you're new here, you're listening to the How We Get Thru podcast, a place for you to feel connected through deep and meaningful conversations with healers from all over the world. I'm your host, Jen, a licensed therapist and founder and CEO of the How We Get Thru app. And my mission is to bring you affordable and diverse therapy resources to help you get through the hard stuff all in one place and at your own pace. Welcome to the How We Get Thru community. Hello and welcome back to the How We Get Thru podcast. We have the second solo episode. And boy, did I learn a lot from the first solo episode. So I can't promise that I won't ramble, but I'm going to do better. So thank you for listening. Also, these episodes are just a little bit shorter, so you can just pop them in like 30 minutes or so. So today I wanted to talk about how we can heal ourselves, right? We talk a lot about having people on the podcast and having them as guides of like, we need help in this area. And I truly believe that we need people in our lives to say, hey, have you looked at this, right? Or, hey, I can help you into this dark tunnel, if you will, and you won't be alone in it. So for sure, we need people to help and guide us along the way. But at its core, we are responsible and have the power to really change and heal ourselves. And so there's been this concept of, timelines and shifting timelines and which version of you is going to show up, or are you on your highest timeline? In case you haven't guessed it, I'm a therapist that turned spiritual, and I'm like, okay, how do I integrate these two? And so I thought of this concept of envisioning like a future self coming to our current self to really help us heal. And this comes from my own experience as a mother, from my own experience as a child, and from my own experience as a therapist. And we talk a lot about healing the inner child. We talk a lot about acknowledging him or her. We talk about their pain. It has also been a lot of my own healing process of the work I did with Kevin Russell was like kind of this meditative state and going back to your inner child. And like, what does she have to say, right? What does she want to do? What does she need to say to you? Which I think can also be another empowering part is that our inner child can guide us as much as we need to heal it, right? So it's kind of like whatever you're needing in that moment, how can you kind of call on these future selves and past selves to heal us in this current moment? I hope you're still with me because I promise this will make sense. So if we look at our past self, our inner child, right? I think some questions you can ask are like, what am I wanting to feel in this moment? If I was a child right now in this scenario, what would I need? Would I need to feel seen? Would I need to feel heard? Would I need to just go play? Would I need to feel present? Would I need a cuddle? Right? Would I need some food? Would I need someone to crack a joke? So when you can kind of connect to your inner child, you can really connect to your inner needs and your emotions. And I think that's really important when we're going to talk about our future self and our present self. But your inner child's like just this raw, unfiltered version of yourself where anything goes, right? Like, I don't care if it looks weird. I don't care if it looks like a tantrum. I don't care if, it doesn't make sense of what I want, right? Because in a child's mind, in a child's experience, there is none of that, what would be the word? Like barriers to what's appropriate and what's not. Like you haven't adulted yet. It's just raw, pure information, it's raw, pure emotion, it's raw and pure needs. And I think when we get shaped by our parents and society, those start to, normally, it's appropriate, but then also we can kind of lose the actual essence of something And then we start to say, well, I can't want that because that doesn't make sense. Or I can't tantrum about that because that's going to be dramatic and that's too much, right? So I think a really good question is, what were your inner child needs? And how do they kind of show up in your current life and in current situations? A lot of this, and I've talked so much about this, but parenting for me has been the most hardest and beautifulest, it's probably not a word, mirror into my own inner child needs. And a lot of it is anger. A lot of it is shame-based. A lot of it is feeling so out of control and wanting to control the situation through anger. So in those moments, when I think about parenting, like my need is to feel seen. It is, I need to feel heard. I need to feel grounded. I need to feel like somebody else has my back and I'm not like in this alone. Oh, I'm getting teary. Yeah. I think that feels like a big piece for me, I think, in my current life. Like I don't want to feel emotionally alone, that I need to like solve this problem by myself, or that I'm like going toe to toe with someone and it's going to be like a losing battle, you know? Like I need support. I need support in that, in those moments. And what's also interesting is like, you know, when I see my children, more specifically my daughter, I like, I get mad and because I see myself. Oh, great. Here we go. Tears. But it is, it's just, this is so wild. This is such a crazy story. I had a really hard morning with my daughter and, she just like, she just knows what she wants, you know? And she doesn't care at what expense for that. Like, and I really admire that. I'm like, you're going to rule the world one day, you know? And she has the boldness that I am still trying to figure out how to come back to. Because I feel like we had a similar boldness and, you know, mine, I think just got left like unchecked in a lot of ways. But what was so crazy is that my brother sent me like this snippet of this home video of me like 10 minutes after this like fight that I don't want to say it's fight, but I just had like a shame storm after I yelled and raged at my daughter. And I was like, God, I'm like, what is she trying to show me? Like, what is the lesson here? Can I please just learn it? Because this is so hard for me. And it's not that and it's probably hard for her too, but I take on so much burden of what the fuck am I doing wrong? Because I'm doing something wrong, which is obviously something I'm working on. Anyway, he sent me this video clip and it's my grandma. It's me just on the video. I think we're in the living desert in Palm Desert. She used to volunteer there. And you can't see anybody else. It's just me. And you hear her voice and she says, go down there and wave. And I look at the camera. I'm like, what? Just so much sass. She's like, go down there and wave. And so I'm like walking and I like turn around and I have this nasty face. And I do this like annoying wave and then I walk off. And I think my grandma was like, oh, I think she's tired, you know, like just so sweet and so kind. And I'm like, oh my God, she is me. My daughter, that's my daughter. I am my daughter. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I was the same way as her, you know, which is just so interesting to recall because the outward perception of you is so different than the inward perception. The inward feelings that I have as a kid are like kind of alone, kind of very insecure, very shy, very scared, very anxious. I just was kind of like floating. That's how I felt. Like I was just like kind of like in this. And I see my daughter really like taking up space early. And I think the initial reaction is like, no, you can't do that because I didn't do that. Like that's the deep feeling. And that's where the anger comes from, is like, I'm not in control in this moment and you can't do that. where in reality, that's all I want for her. That's all I want for me, right? Take up that space. Tell me who you are. Tell me what's not right. Tell me what doesn't feel good, right? But in the moment, it is so triggering for me. So this is a parenting episode, I guess. It is. You can like reparent yourself. So it's just so interesting when you can kind of like sit and peel back these layers of your inner child and like, what was she feeling? What did she need? And we can, shit on our parents all day. And I do think that's helpful at some point, right? And then there's a certain place you get with it of like, they did the best they could with what they had, which I'm sure you've heard a lot. How do I forgive them? And what am I going to take from that, right? And what do I now get to heal for myself? Because again, as you have kids, like you can be the best parent in the world and trying to do the best. There's still going to be things that was like, hey, mom, this really sucked when you raged at me all the time, right? And I think like being a really receptive parent is like, yes, you're right. That was so hard for me. And I can imagine how hard that was for you. And I'm learning to still let go of that shame of how differently I wanted to show up. And just like being a space where they can say that. I think I've said this a lot in the podcast too, but like the millennial generation is like, like we're healing generational trauma. And then we have like these kids with doing gentle parenting. We're just getting shit on by them too. And it's like, it is a lot of pressure, right? But it also, I do believe we're here to kind of transmute a lot of that energy. And that's exhausting and that is hard. And no one's going to give you a trophy at the end of the day. No one's going to give you a high five. What you're going to get is you feeling better about you. What you're going to get is you starting to feel a little less shameful, right? You're going to start feeling more proud. You're going to start feeling more peace. And it's going to be such an internal gift that no one is going to know, right? They might notice a shift in you, but there's not a huge, besides the collective, we're just helping the collective. There's not a huge like materialistic external thing that we're going to get from this. And that can be really hard, or it could be like, it is what it is. So start with your inner child, ask her all the things, ask her what she needs, ask her what her experience is, and see how she shows up. This can also be very positive, right? Children are so present in the moment because they don't have like the capacity and they don't have like the worries of the world of like, what's my next thing? What do I have to do next? Is this going to happen? Blah, 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 right? They are so present. And so again, you can use them as a mirror. Like, oh my gosh, we're just playing here. Can I just stay present and play? Okay, then we have our current self, which is just a hot mess, or we're kind of stable sometimes, right? And our current self is very important to know where we are so we know where we're wanting to go and to know where we've been, our past self, right? So our current self is the most important, I think, again, to be aware of our emotions, our thoughts, our body sensations, because that's going to tell you, oh, do I need to go to my past self or do I need to go to my future self? So I think, again, the past self can be a reminder of like the rawness of who you are. The future self is like the wisdom and the mothering that you can give yourself in this current moment. So what I have done in the past, and I just really love this exercise. Again, we'll stick with the parenting because it feels like the most fun, the most triggering for me. Is when I'm like in the shame storm of it, how can I picture my future self coming to me in that moment and mothering the shit out of me, right? So I literally visualize myself like 30 years from now. What do I look like? What am I wearing? How am I talking? How am I presenting myself? I mean, she's a badass bitch and she's been through a lot, and she's, you're always like perspective, hindsight's 2020. She has so much regulation and so much empathy for me in this moment that I I don't even need to say what I need. She knows exactly how I feel. She knows exactly what I need. And she knows exactly how to mother me in this moment, right? And that can change for you all the time, or how she shows up can change for you in different scenarios is really what I wanted to say. So in these moments, for example, I'm like in my bed and I'm just like, well, I'm just such a fucking terrible person. I'm a terrible mom, blah, 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 blah. I imagine her like opening the door very softly. I imagine her like slowly walking over to me and sitting on the bed. Oh my gosh, getting teary again. Oh, this is good. If you're a visual person, you should do this. Or you can journal about it, meditate, whatever, doesn't matter. And I just imagine her just starting, we call it shemos, but just like touching me, just like slowly, just gently like rubbing my back. And she's not saying anything. Like I don't need words in this moment. You know, I just need space. I need to be known. Oh man. I need to feel held. And again, I think there's something so powerful of like having your future self come and like you're not having to explain anything. Like that is so, so beautiful when we can allow our future self to say, yeah, I know exactly what this feels like. And I know how hard it is. And I'm also proof that I am you on the other side. And so really it's just like, I think especially as mothers, or if you care for anybody, right? If you're in any position to care for other people, we can tend to feel like, well, who's caring for us, right? And if you have people in your life, that is really great. But at the same time, we can also learn to care for ourselves. And sometimes we need mothering in that moment, right? Sometimes we don't need to mother our inner child. We need actual care in this moment. And so I would encourage you to think about like, again, what is if it's 20 years from now, if it's 5 years from now, whatever this like older version of yourself is, like she has gone through it and she can hold so much empathy and love and space for you. And you don't feel bad about it, you know, because it is you. And there is something also really comforting of like that knowing that you don't, again, have to explain. So she would just do that. And I'm like tearful about it now. And then she would like get me some tea and I would just sit up and I don't even think I would talk. I would just like let her hug me, you know, maybe light a candle. Maybe she would tell me to just take a deep breath, right? Like, and all of these things we can do for ourselves, right? But I do think it's important to like almost kind of like sandwiching these versions of ourselves. Like we can call on these different versions, these past or present versions for whatever we're needing in the moment, right? Do I need to connect to more raw emotion of who I am? Or do I need some mothering and some care in this moment? And, you know, what would happen if you put them all together, right? Past, present, future. That's some fucking badass shit, right? Can you imagine like how grounded that is? I know who I am this moment, and I know where I'm going and I'm held. I should tweet that. Is Twitter? No, X? I don't even know, guys. Maybe make it a t-shirt. Anyway, I just love you all. I would encourage you to connect to past self and then also really build out this future self. You can even give her a name. You can give her a whole archetype, a persona. I mean, is she wearing like a flowy skirt with like gray hair, or is she still dyeing her hair even though it's so gray? Does she have all the jewels on, right? Is she like fluffy and like comforting? Is she how many wrinkles does she have on her face, right? Does she did she learn to like make bread and is gonna like, make you a sandwich from this fresh bread she made? Like, what is she? And how can you really let her take care of you in this moment? Because you deserve it. Okay, guys, look at 19 minutes. We're good. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of you, and thank you for all your support in this next solo episode. And yeah, I just hope you guys have a great day. And let me know if you have any questions. You can always DM me on Instagram, How We Get Thru. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And thank you for your open hearts, ears, and minds. We'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for listening to this solo episode. I hope it was short and sweet, and I hope you got a lot out of it. As always, thank you so much for being here. And if you would like to leave us a review up on Apple Podcasts, that helps us so greatly. Thank you guys so much.